everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to my weekly wrap-up of May 17th, 2015. I hope you guys have had a good week and a good weekend. I know I have. I'm actually going to start off this weekly wrap-up with a shout-out. I've been working on catching up on my watch later list, and I subscribed to Libby Stevenson a while ago, and I have been trying to catch up on her videos, and I thought I need to tell all you guys about her because I really enjoy her videos. I love her personality and I love her sense of humor, but she also reads some really great things that I don't hear other people talking about on BookTube sometimes, and so I really enjoy learning about new books from her channel. She recently did a favorites video, it's part 1, and she talks about just this wonderful variety of people, Thomas Hardy's books, Daphne du Maurier, Terry Pratchett, Jane Eyre, some more contemporary stuff that I've never even heard of, and yes, I think you guys should go check out her channel and subscribe to her. That would be really fantastic. This week I finished 5 books and 2 short stories, and now I'm going to tell you about them. The first book that I finished this week was Blood of Amber by Roger Zelazny. This is the 7th book in the Amber Chronicles series and the 2nd book in the Corwin cycle, so it's the 2nd book that follows Merlin, who is the son of Corwin. In the first book with Merlin, somebody had been trying to kill him every year on his birthday, and he was trying to figure out who this person was. He did find out who this person was, but it turns out this is a much bigger problem, and the entire royal family is being attacked, basically in a family blood vendetta type of thing. In Blood of Amber, Merlin escapes from his captivity where he ended up in the end of Trumps of Doom, and he is trying to gain leverage or more information about the man who was trying to kill him by going after his mother and attacking a sorcerer or battling a sorcerer in the Keep of the Four Worlds, and then he ends up in Wonderland, like at the Mad Hatter's tea party in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, because he was like summoned there with Trump magic, and I at this point went, oh really? Okay. That's unusual. This was a completely decent book, and I don't even have much to say about it. Even though, like, a bunch of people are introduced and you learn about a lot of people's connections to each other in the story, you learn more about some people's motivations for, like, why are they trying to kill Merlin, it just feels like not a lot happens in the story. I don't have much more to say about it than that. It was completely average to me. I didn't find myself super interested in it, but I wasn't like incredibly bored either. These books are so easy to read, I can sit down and read one of them in a day, and mostly I just have fun kind of poking fun at elements of it. I know I should probably take it more seriously, but it's a little bit dated. What can I say? The next book that I finished was Captain Vorpatril's Alliance by Lois, McMaster, Bujold. This follows the adventures of Ivan Vorpatril, who is the cousin of Miles Barkoskin. So this is a story about Ivan, not Miles, and Ivan is definitely the anti-Miles. He doesn't want to have anything to do with Miles' adventures. He doesn't want anything to do with the crazy stuff that his family gets up to. He's a regular guy, and all of his family members are brilliant, famous people, and Ivan wants none of this most of the time. He just wants to have a career and a life and be left out of all of the dangerous stuff. Ivan is on Komar in this book, and he is asked by Byerly, his other cousin who works for IMSEC, to get to know this young woman named Tej, who is not who she says she is. It turns out that she is on the run from Jackson's Hole. Her house has been taken over by another house, and she thinks that most of her family is dead, and they're coming after her. And Ivan decides to help her by marrying her to save her from bounty hunters. And then when they try to get a divorce when they're on Barayar, they can't get a divorce. I thought this was a pretty good book. I gave it 4 stars instead of 3 because it made me laugh out loud. I really do like Ivan, but overall, the story itself is not the most fantastic thing. I think the humor elements in it are the best things. This is meant to be a lighter, funnier story. It doesn't have the depth and the darker emotions in it that some of the previous books do. And I didn't necessarily care about some of the characters. I really liked Ivan, but I didn't really feel all that interested in Tej, his wife. I was just sort of meh about her. I think the book could have been a little bit shorter. I think some elements could have been trimmed out and it could have been a bit more streamlined. So it has some flaws, but I still gave it a pretty high rating because I really did enjoy reading it, and it was just a nice thing to be reading this week. I flew through it pretty fast. The next book that I finished was Castle Hangnail by Ursula Vernon. I loved this. This is a middle grade book. It's for ages 8 to 12, so it's for very relatively young readers, and it's just a lovely story about a 12-year-old girl who goes to a castle to fill a vacancy for their wicked witch, their master of the castle position, and the minions there are a little bit unsure how this is going to work out. They need a master because otherwise their castle is going to be decommissioned and demagicified. So they really need a master, and she's the only person who showed up. But she's 12, she's not really a witch, and she doesn't seem to know magic very well, and she has to accomplish a series of tasks in 6 weeks in order to establish herself as the master of the castle. This is a lovely story, and I think the core message is summed up by this sentence. It just goes to show that being powerful is not worth much if you haven't got heart to go with it. Amen. Highly, highly recommended for everybody. And if you want a middle grade story with a really great female character in it, Ursula Vernon writes that kind of thing. The next book that I finished was The Girl on the Road by Monica Byrne, and I'm going to do a full review of this hopefully later this week, so forgive me if I don't talk about it very much right now. This is a speculative fiction novel. It's science fictional set in the near future, and it follows the story of one woman who is trying to travel from India to Djibouti and then on to Ethiopia, where her parents were killed before she was born. And then another girl, it's actually, she's telling her story as an older woman, but when she was a child, about her traveling from Mauritania, where she was a slave, to Ethiopia with some men and then a woman that they pick up who she becomes very attached to. You don't know until almost the last couple of chapters how these women's storylines are connected, and I loved how they started to come together near the end of the book. This is the co-winner of this year's Tiptree Award. The other winner was My Real Children by Jo Walton, and while I love Jo Walton, I vastly prefer this book over My Real Children. It just worked a lot more for me. I found myself much more engaged in the story, and I loved how this one was written more than My Real Children. So definitely try giving this one a go, and I will talk more about it later in my review. The last novel that I finished this week was Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. I picked this one up on a whim because it wasn't available immediately on Overdrive, and I suddenly had this yen to try Ray Bradbury. And I think that maybe I shouldn't have started with this particular one because the writing style drove me crazy, and I'm getting the feeling that this is not the way that Bradbury's other books are written. Something Wicked This Way Comes is about two teenage boys. They're almost 14 years old, Jim Nightshade and Will Holloway. A dark carnival comes to town, and they have this carousel that when you go forwards on it, you get older. When you go backwards on it, you get younger. And the boys running around the carnival realize that there's some evil stuff going on here. The carnival people seem to be grabbing people or drawing people to the various sites that turn them into circus freaks or change them in some way, and the boys are trying to stop them. And Will Holloway's father, Charles, is also involved in trying to stop Mr. Dark and the rest of the carnival people. I know that's probably not a great explanation of the plot, but I really have a hard time pinpointing what the book is about because I was way distracted by the writing style. I've spent much more time trying to figure out the similes and metaphors and dig my way through the prose style than actually following what the story was about. I felt like the book could have been like a novella length if the story had been just the same, but the writing had been simpler, and it would have been fine at that length. The story and the themes are really good. This idea of, you know, a young boy really wanting to be older and an older man really wanting to be younger, and of course fighting against evil. Pretty classic stuff right there. But the writing style, oh, I thought I would get used to it, but by the halfway point I just wanted it to be over. So not my favorite book of the week, but I gave it a pretty neutral rating on Goodreads because I think that it is a classic. It's a good thing to have read, but I think your enjoyment of it's going to really depend on whether you can get through the very, very figurative language. I also read 2 short stories this week. They are both nominated for Locus Awards. The first one was The Truth About Owls by Amal El Motar, which is about a young girl, a teenager, who is originally from Palestine, I believe, and she now lives in Glasgow with her mother, and her father is still in the Middle East. And she is dealing with the cultural divide, I guess, and not being like the children around her in this new country she's living in. And she develops a relationship with this owl at a zoo or a museum. And I don't have much to say about the story. I didn't really connect with it. It was actually quite well written, I think, but the theme in the story didn't really connect to me in any way. The other short story that I read was Covenant by Elizabeth Bear. This is a really interesting story about a serial killer who has been chemically right-minded and then gets kidnapped by what is implied to be another serial killer. And while he's going through this experience of being kidnapped and trying to escape, he's reliving his own memories of when he was a serial killer, and he's comparing like what he knows he thought from the serial killer's perspective versus what he is now experiencing as a victim of this crime. And because he's been like neurochemically changed, the way that he views this entire situation, the way that he views his past actions are very, very different. This brings up some really complicated questions like, is this person really cured? Is this more ethical or moral or just than putting this person in prison? Is it okay to change this person chemically, change them physically, and then put them back out in society and say, you are mentally shackled, you're okay now? And I don't have any answers. It really is kind of bothering me that when I was reading the story, I was thinking, oh yeah, this is great. This serial killer getting a taste of his own medicine. But you get to the end of the story and you're like, but is he the same person he used to be? I don't know. Has anybody else read the story? I would love to know what you guys think about it. It it was good. It was quite good. That is everything that I read this past week. I'm currently reading 4 things. I'm reading Emma by Jane Austen, Prudence by Gail Carriger, Cryoburn by Lois McMaster Bujold, and I'm finishing the rest of the short stories in the Kaleidoscope collection. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any comments about things that I read or that I'm currently reading, please leave them down below, and I will talk to you guys again in my next video. Bye.